Good evening, and welcome back to the Unfiltered Political Lens. Tonight, we're diving into a question that sits at the center of nearly every political battle, cultural conflict, and social controversy unfolding across America today. Why does it feel like Americans no longer live in the same reality? How did a nation that once shared common institutions and common facts and common understanding of itself become a country where neighbors can watch the same event and walk away believing completely different things happened? The answer isn't simple, and it didn't happen overnight. The death of American consensus wasn't caused by one election, one political party, or one president, or one generation. It was the result of decades of cultural shifts, technological revolutions, political incentives, and social transformations that gradually pulled Americans into separate worlds. To understand where we are, we first have to understand where we came from. For much of the 20th century, America operated under what historians often call a shared reality. That doesn't mean everyone agreed on politics. Far from it. Americans fought over civil rights, wars, taxes, labor unions, religion, and countless other issues. But despite those disagreements, most citizens consumed information from a relatively small number of sources. Millions watched the same evening news broadcasts. Families read the same newspapers. Students learned from similar textbooks, and national events were experienced collectively. Whether someone leaned conservative or liberal, there was often a broad agreement about basic facts, even when people disagreed about what those facts meant. During the 1950s and the 1960s and even into the 80s, information moved through a handful of gatekeepers. The television networks, newspapers, radio stations, and major institutions had determined what stories reached the public. The critics often pointed out that this system had flaws. Certain voices were marginalized and some stories went uncovered. Bias certainly existed, yet there was a side effect that many people overlook. Americans were generally consuming the same information at the same time. When major events occurred, most citizens could begin the conversation from a common starting point. Today, that common starting point has largely disappeared, and the first cracks began appearing as cable television expanded. Instead of three major networks competing for mass audiences, dozens of channels emerged, each seeking a unique audience. The competition for attention intensified, and the ratings became increasingly important. The political commentary became entertainment. Then came the internet. At first, many believed the internet would create a golden age of information. Suddenly, anyone could access the news, research, and perspectives from around the world. The information was democratized. The barriers to communication collapsed, but something unexpected had happened. The same technology that expanded access to the information also expanded access to misinformation, manipulation, and ideological isolation. Instead of gathering around a few national campfires, the Americans scattered into thousands of digital tribes. Forums became communities. The communities became identities, and identities became political movements. And over time, the people stopped simply holding opinions. They began building entire personal identities around those opinions, and the political affiliation was had become a central identity rather than merely a voting preference. These shifts transformed disagreement, and in the previous generations, a political disagreement might have been viewed as a difference of opinion. Today, many people view disagreement as a threat to their identity itself, and once politics becomes identity, the compromise becomes betrayal. Almost every election feels apocalyptic, every policy dispute feels existential, and every news story becomes a battle for survival. The social media accelerated this process beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. Algorithms do not reward the balance, they reward engagement. They do not prioritize calm analysis, and they prioritize the emotional reactions, and the fear spreads faster than nuance. Anger spreads faster than context. Outrage spreads faster than facts. But the result is an information ecosystem where the most emotionally provocative content often receives the greatest visibility. There are many people who assume they are choosing what information they can consume. In reality, increasingly sophisticated algorithms are choosing what the information can reach them. Every click teaches a system what captures the attention. Every share reinforces existing preferences, Every interaction also gradually builds a personalized reality. Two Americans living on the same street can open their phones and enter completely different worlds. One may see stories suggesting democracy is under attack from the right. Another may see stories suggesting that freedom is under attack from the left. Both may believe they are fully informed. Both may believe the evidence is obvious, and both may believe the other side has lost touch with reality, and neither may realize how much of their worldview has been shaped by invisible digital systems designed primarily to maximize the engagement. And this is where the tribal politics enters the picture. Human beings are tribal by nature, and throughout history, people have formed groups based on religion, ethnicity, nationality, class, and ideology. But our modern technology did not create the tribalism, it amplified it. Today, political tribes often function like competing realities. Members of each tribe develop their own experts, media outlets, and their heroes and villains, language, symbols, and narratives. Facts that support the tribe are embraced, and facts that challenge the tribe are often um, um, dismiss, of course. But the ultimate goal shifts from discovering truth to defending the group. This dynamic affects everyone. It affects conservatives, it affects liberals, and it affects independents. No group is entirely immune from the pull of tribal loyalty. Perhaps the most concerning consequences is the collapse of the institutional trust. Trust is the invisible foundation upon which societies operate. When the citizens trust institutions, disagreements remain manageable. When trust collapses, every action becomes suspect. Many Americans no longer trust their government, and others no longer trust the media. Some no longer trust universities, and others no longer trust corporations. Many no longer trust the elections. Some no longer trust scientific authorities. But regardless of where individuals stand politically, trust in major institutions has declined dramatically across large segments of the population, and without trust, consensus becomes nearly impossible. Almost every piece of information is viewed through a lens of suspicion. Every source is questioned, and every motive is challenged, and every attempt at persuasion becomes more difficult. The result is a nation increasingly fragmented into competing realities. But where does that lead, you might ask? That may be the most important question of all. Some analysts believe America is entering a permanent era of polarization. Under this view, technological fragmentation will continue pushing citizens into smaller and more isolated ideological communities. Artificial intelligence could intensify these trends. Imagine personalized political messaging generated specifically for each individual voter. Imagine AI generated news tailored to reinforce existing beliefs. And let's imagine deepfakes becoming indistinguishable from reality. Imagine a future where seeing is no longer believing. The challenges ahead may dwarf anything we've experienced so far. Yet there is another possibility. History shows that societies often adapt to disruptive technologies. The printing press disrupted authority. Radio transformed the communication. Television reshaped politics, and the internet changed everything. Each revolution created chaos before new norms eventually emerged. But perhaps the same will happen with social media and artificial intelligence. Perhaps future generations will develop new forms of media literacy. Perhaps institutions will build trust through transparency as well as accountability. And perhaps citizens will become more skeptical of emotional manipulation and more committed to critical thinking. But none of that is guaranteed. The future depends on choices. The death of the American consensus did not occur because Americans suddenly became enemies. It occurred because the systems that once created shared experiences gradually fractured into countless competing realities. And the challenge facing America is not simply political, it is informational, it is cultural, it is technological, and ultimately it is human. Can a nation remain united when its citizens no longer agree on the basic facts? Can democracy function when every source of information is viewed with suspicion? And can trust be built once it has been lost? Those questions may define the next chapter of American history, because before a nation can solve its problems, it must first agree on what those problems are. And in today's America, that may be the hardest challenge of all. Thank you for for tuning into the Unfiltered Political Lens. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue exploring the issues shaping our nation and our world. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And as always, peace.